Hi everyone, this is Marty McDermott from Franchise Interviews, and welcome to another edition of Great Quotes in Franchising, where each podcast you get to hear a great quote in franchising. You know, Don and I have been hosting Franchise Interviews now almost during that time. We've had some incredible quotes on our show. Today you're going to get to hear from franchise attorney Nancy Lanard, and I should emphasize the word franchise attorney. Picture this, your cousin Joe just graduates from law school, and he specialized in corporate law or civil law, and you say, you know what, I'm going to buy a franchise and I'm going to use my cousin Joe as my franchise attorney. Well, believe it or not, it happens all the time, and not a good idea. One of the things that Don and I, if you've listened to our show starting from 4 years ago to current moment, you'll see one of the main themes of the show is that we emphasize to get a franchise attorney. Very, very important. Nancy is very, very knowledgeable. We've had her on the show 2 times up to this point, and she's always offers us some great advice. Today she's going to be talking a little bit about leasing, and of course she's going to emphasize the importance of hiring a franchise attorney. And here we go with another edition of Great Quotes in Franchising with Nancy Lanard. Enjoy.
You can do.
And not just any attorney, a franchise attorney, because another type of attorney isn't going to understand that what types of changes can and can't be made. This is a very unique type of document. It isn't like a lease, for example,
right,
which is a heavily negotiable document. We negotiate practically every sentence in a lease when we get it. But a franchise agreement is very different. A material change to the franchise agreement can mean that they have to change their disclosure documents. So we know what can and can't be negotiated, what is a critical change, what is a critical thing to change,
right,
and what is necessary to protect our clients.
Right. It's such a big investment in a franchise. Why not make the additional investment to have total peace of mind? Just make sure everything you're doing is correct.
If the franchisee is taking an SBA loan or some other type of financing, just include those fees. That's why we do it at a flat fee, so that people can anticipate what their costs are going to be up front,
right,
and just include that in the financing that they're going to be getting.
Right. Good. So I guess changing gears a little bit, Nancy, let's talk about I guess also your specialty in reviewing a lease. What are some legal concerns for franchisees in leasing commercial space?
Those are huge because, as I just said, the leases are extraordinarily negotiable documents, and everything in a lease is basically negotiable and negotiated. Because we do so many leases, and last year we did probably over 100 retail shopping center and mall leases, because we have certain franchise systems that we work with, and we are the recommended and authorized law firm for handling the leases for their franchisees.
Yeah.
So we just do, plus we do it as obviously part of our relationship with our franchisee clients as well, and then any other clients that come to us that need a lease reviewed. So we do so many. Everything is up for grabs. I mean, one of the things that, for example, in any retail situation, you're going to be paying, a franchisee or a tenant is going to be paying common area maintenance charges, known as CAM charges, in addition to their basic rent. And CAM charges are to cover the areas that are, as the term sounds like, common area. So parking lot expenses, roof expenses, the common area bathrooms and hallways or walkways if it's outside, and the lighting, electricity, the maintenance to maintain, repair, to replace, any of those kinds of items. Well, we have an exhibit that we attach to every lease that we negotiate or that we review and send on to the landlord to negotiate. We attach an exhibit of 28 items that we want excluded from including in those pass-through charges to the tenant. So these charges are passed through on a prorated basis to the tenant based on the square footage percentage that tenant has in the shopping center or mall, what is included in those common area maintenance charges can vary. And so we say that things such as legal fees relating to leasing the center should not be passed through to the tenant, our client. Expenditures that are of a capital nature should not be passed through. Repairs that are caused by the landlord or by another tenant in the shopping center should not be passed through. That's just a couple examples of 28 items that we have in a list that we negotiate on our client's behalf to be excluded from including. And so that can save, on a tenant's bottom line every single month.
And when you're starting a business, your overhead is so crucial. So, and this is, a major expense, of course, so just not what the monthly, rent or lease is going to be, but, all those additional things can all add up in a hurry, so.
No question. And even things such as what are included in taxes, that the rental income should not be part of the taxes that are passed through to the tenant, because most leases are what's known as triple net leases, which means that all expenses of the landlord are basically passed through. But we are very careful on what kinds of things should not be passed through. From a practical end, defining what the landlord's responsible for repairing and maintaining and what the tenant's responsible for needs to be very clearly spelled out in the lease, and often is not. The landlord should be responsible for structural repairs, but even what is defined as structural is critical to clarify. For example, if you have pipes that come from another space into your space, is that your responsibility or the landlord's responsibility? Who shares in that if there's a problem with that? So if it says that plumbing on the interior is your responsibility, what happens to those pipes? So those have to be addressed. Tenant is typically responsible for interior repairs and maintenance, for the plate glass, for non-structural repairs, and for the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system.
If you'd like to hear that whole interview with Nancy Lanard, all you have to do is go to franchiseinterviews.com and go to our franchises by category page and go to our franchise services section, and then you can hear that whole interview. In fact, we had Nancy on our show twice in the history of hosting franchiseinterviews.com. And lastly, we'd just like to thank everyone for making this podcast such a big success. This particular podcast that you're listening to with Nancy, this is our second most listened to podcast on our Great Quotes and Franchising podcast. So thanks everyone, and we'll see you again soon with another edition of Great Quotes and Franchising from Franchise Interviews.